Welcome everyone in the very first episode of Frontend News Podcast. Today is a big day for us and big honor to host you guys over the next 20 minutes. And you must know that it's probably the most requested YouTube channel in the history of the frontend world. Guys, I know you are struggling all day long looking for the latest frontend news, finding what has been updated, what's in the feature release, but now your pain is over. In this podcast, we'll walk you through most hot wanted news you could even imagine. But first thing first, let me introduce the team. I'm Chris, I'm an interactive programmer, mostly working with JavaScript and latest frontend tools. I've been coding for like 12 years and today I'm CTO here at Frontend House as well as your host. We are going to be for you all day long, reading latest news, answering your comments and addressing your issues. But who is behind me? I'm here with Tomasz, my best friend with whom I've been working on the same project for like 8 years?
Yes.
It 8 years, Tomasz?
Yes, it is 8 years, man. It's such a long time. So thank you, Chris, for such a great introduction, mate. So as you already know, I'm Tomasz and I travel through world of mobile and web development for over 8 years. I'm strongly connected with the JavaScript ecosystem and actually it's my primary language I'm using daily. So that's why I'm here to share the hottest news from the JavaScript world, especially for you. So let's get ready.
The Rambo! Guys, every 2 weeks we're gonna post new video and new podcast with at least 3 most important front-end news. Curated project, tips and tricks from our developers. Today is the first episode and let's get started. Tomasz, what's on your plate today?
Okay, so I prepared 3 awesome topics that are really hot nowadays. At first, we will speak about the React Server components. The second thing is 2 fresh libraries for the frontend, worth to check. And the third thing is a couple of frontend trends for the current year. Does it sound good?
Sounds awesome.
So let's start it.
Okay, so let's start with React Server components.
Exactly. So the concept of rendering the data straight into the template and send the ready-to-use HTML document to the client is not a new practice.
It's not.
No. I'm sure that a lot of you guys were or are using PHP language, for example, when dealing with WordPress tasks. In short terms, you can run the server code between the templates, like having mixed PHP with HTML tags. In a React, there are a bunch of tools and frameworks that use that approach to handle the server-side rendering or even statically generate the pages. These tools are like, Gatsby, Next.js, we know that stuff.
Yeah.
So the Dan Abramov team decided to implement a similar concept, similar mechanism in the React library. So in short terms, we won't need Next.js or Gatsby anymore. Maybe somewhere in the future, we will see. So let me introduce the React Server components. It's still in the development phase, but we are so lucky that we can already test it by our own. React team showed the demo for the hungry React developers, so you can find the link in the description. And believe me, it's so tasty, mate.
Is it, Tomasz? So what are the pros and cons of this approach?
Let's speak about it a little bit. At first, React Server components resolve the network waterfall problem. The second thing is that it helps to keep the client app bundle size as small as necessary. Third thing is that server components unfortunately do not handle an interactivity. Another thing, only props, which means data, and the JSX are serializable and can be passed from the server component into the client component. Also, the client component preserves the state when we are re-rendering the server-side components. The last thing for the React Server components is that we can have something that's called shared components between the server and the client.
Okay, the first thing you mentioned, it was like waterfall problem, yes?
Yes.
So what is all about? I mean, what's the waterfall problem?
Okay, so let's stick with the React environment. The waterfall problem occurs when we have, for example, parent component and a child component, both of them are fetching the data. At first, we would like to render the parent component and fetch the data for the parent component. Probably we will display a spinner or any kind of indicator that will point that right now we are fetching the data. Okay, we fetch the data for the parent component. Now it's time to render the child component and fetch the data for the child component once again. So basically it means that we are fetching the data, render something, fetching the data once again, and render something once again. So we cannot fetch the child data before we get the parent. So this is like the waterfall, yes? Because it's going down and down and down and down and down. The question is, why not fetch all the data at once, for example, in page component scope? Well, yes, we can do this. Obviously, it's easy to be done, but this solution, it seems it's not easy to maintain. For example, imagine you are removing the child component from this page, okay? But still you will have fetching those fragments of the data in your fetch method. So instead of removing just a single component, you will need to remove the component, update the fetch method, and then you will be there, okay? So it's like extra step. React Server Components answers to that problem. With such an approach, we can encapsulate data fetching in the server component scope and keeping the fetch, all the fetches at the same time. So it's awesome, man.
Okay, so how this approach could really limit the client app bundle size?
Yeah, this is pretty simple. Imagine the task that requires you to parse the, for example, created product timestamp into the readable date format. Okay, so in most of the cases, I believe you will use, for example, DateFNS library on the client side just to get the timestamp and parse it and display to the user. So with React Server Components, you can deal with the parsing on the server side. So what does it mean? It means that you can take the DateFNS library from the client build, from the client side, and use it only on the backend. So what's the result? The client bundle size is being decreased by the size of the DateFNS library. Imagine what we can do more with rest of the libraries, man.
That's awesome.
Exactly.
Okay, so two last questions. What is really like difference between React Server Components and server-side rendering?
Yeah, these two mechanisms looks a little bit the same. That's correct, but they are not working exactly the same. So with the React Server Components, we have like three types. Let's stick with two types of the components, the client-side and the server-side components. The client-side components can preserve its state when we are, for example, switching the road and fetching the another page, which is being rendered on the server side. With the server-side rendering approach, if we are switching to another page, for example, we need to fetch the whole page, which is rendered on the server, and display to the user, which means we lost the whole state, because it's like, you know, the new page instance, the new state. We need to use some complex state managers like Redux or MobX, and that's the main difference, man.
Okay, yeah. Thanks for the explanation, Tomasz.
No problem.
And the last one.
Okay. I'm ready.
You're ready. How to use the shared component?
Okay, shared components concept is quite easy to explain. So the server-side components are defined with the .server suffix in the file name. The client components are opposite, so with the .client suffix. And as you can imagine, the shared components are without any suffix in the name, which means that it depends on the place where you import such component. Okay. If you import the shared components in the server side, it means that this component became a server-side component too. And opposite, if you will import it in the client side, it will be the client component. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool.
Thanks, Tomasz. Okay, so I think we know everything about React Server Components now.
Hopefully, yes.
Okay. Guys, if you have any more questions, just ask in the comments. Tomasz is happy to explain everything you need to know. But the second thing was about 2 new libraries you want to share with us?
Oh, yes, you're right. Okay, so let me introduce the Dan.js library. If you are interested in neural networks and would like to play with it, you're able to do this. And it works both on the front end and the backend apps. Everything based on JavaScript, and the link, as always, is available in the description. Please check it out.
Sure. Okay, we have Dan.js. How the neural network could impact the front-end apps?
Yeah, this is the good question. This topic is still complicated. It's complex, but let me try to answer in one sentence. So,
okay.
Yeah, the neural network might help to determine, for example, the books recommendation based on the user behavior in our app. For example, if user clicks a lot, if, I don't know, discounts section, anywhere on our app, where is the discount section, the user clicks it really often. So based on that, we can train our model on the front end, gather the data, and based on those data, we can display the correct recommendations for the user. Does it make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Cool.
Okay, I think that everyone who is interested in neural network and machine learning and stuff is familiar with TensorFlow. So how those two are different? How can you compare Dan.js to TensorFlow actually?
Good question. So Dan.js is a much smaller library. It's a basic tool for neural networks and machine learning. We can use it to learn some basics. And TensorFlow, well, this is like a huge ecosystem with a lot of libraries, a lot of dependencies, and it works not only in the JavaScript. It has also implementation in C++, as far as I saw.
I think it has implementation in mature languages.
So, as you can see, this is the huge difference. Dan.js is only for the JavaScript.
Okay.
But it's worth to check. For the simpler cases, I think it will be a really, really nice fit for you.
Okay, so you mentioned you have 2 libraries.
Yeah.
The first one, Dan.js, we already know it. You can guys go and check the URL and find yourself if it's okay or not. The second one.
Second one, okay, RevoGrid. This is the new powerful tool to build new, complex, really nice looking spreadsheets and put it straight into your front-end app. It works with the famous frameworks like Angular, React, or even Vue. Or if you want to, you can use it in the Vanilla.js projects. It contains a lot of features with a good performance on the top.
Tomasz, how can you utilize RevoGrid library in your app?
That's the good question. So, for example, you can build custom and complex schedules, or if you want, you can deal with the complex and big data grids with a lot of customization, sorting options, filtering, and stuff like that, with, of course, beautiful CSS customization on the top.
Okay, good news, guys. You will see how to use it in tips and tricks session.
Oh, you're right.
Which is right after our news.
Yes, you're right. I prepared something tasty for you, and on the tips and tricks section. So stay tuned and let's move forward. That was the second news, guys, and the third one. And the third one is a couple of front-end trends for 2021.
What are the trends?
Okay, so Stack Overflow created a survey at the end of the 2020 to
As
check.
they always do.
As they always do, exactly. They want to check the developers' preferences over different things. So let me focus on the languages a little bit. The first place for most widely used language, programming language, to put some details, is 67% of respondents picked the JavaScript as their primary language.
Woo!
Woohoo! Yeah, it's not a joke. JavaScript is most widely used language. So guys, if you want to start your journey with the programming, you better choose JavaScript. The second thing about the frameworks. most widely used frameworks and tools. The first place, which is...
I don't know. jQuery?
It is.
As they always do.
It is jQuery. So believe me or not, 43% of the respondents said that they are using and supporting jQuery in their projects. The second place is for React. It's over 35%, and Angular 25%. Vue.js is some 7th, 8th position with 15%, and let's just leave it as it is. Long live the jQuery.
Long live the React. Come on, what do you use in your projects?
I use JavaScript. But yeah, you're right. In most of the cases I work with the React. Nowadays is the most popular from the business and developer side perspective tool that is widely used by all of the developers. So let's stick with the React, Chris. We don't want back to jQuery, or
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see next project.
Come on. And yeah, the last trend I would like to share with you for the current year is the how to style your apps. Nowadays, the functional CSS take a lead, and the most popular library to handle the styling with the functional CSS approach is actually Tailwind CSS. So guys, if you don't know this library, it's worth to check because it rocks, and it will rock for the current year too. And thank you, because that's it, what I prepared for today, and see you on the next chapter. Thank you.
Which is?
Website of the week.
See you in the website of the week, guys. Okay guys, I'm super excited and welcome in the next section and start the first review of Website of the Day. This one was rewarded by awards and I really enjoyed it. A few days ago, the Sea Shepherd organization released their new website on the topic of phishing nets problem. No doubt, quite important thing nowadays. Just to let you know, they are non-profit global marine organization based in North America. They focus on problem of killing whales in protected waters. To sum up, the current page was designed to save marine wildlife from extinction by deadly fishing nets. Because as we all know, if nothing is done, there won't be anything left. So after explaining this noble purpose, I think we can finally discuss the content. Firstly, we see a quick view of part of 3D and short sentence about the intention. Guys, let's take an action. We click this button and switch to the short video explaining the whyness of phishing nets problem. By skipping, but I highly recommend you guys actually see it, or just finishing watching, we see the main page with centered located 3D model of Earth. And to prevent myself from forgetting, I wanted to mention about this visible green texture covering the entire content. I really enjoy it. Despite the texture of an old CRT TV, it seems to be more movable. You can easily implement this effect on your designs by listening to live coding hosted by Tomasz in the next few weeks. On the left side we see logo and small menu, below some short infos and statistics. Let's go with the rounded arrow and see what's gonna happen. The background is getting more grayish and extra buttons appearing. By discovering the right button, you browse shifts working for the organization. By clicking on the chosen fleet, you can also read about the key story and numbers of saved sea animals. The navigation buttons speak for themselves, readable and up to date with current trends. You can also search for ships key story by choosing them on the Earth visualization. Everything moves smoothly with consistent design. Funny thing happens when you click on the left Take Action button, where we face a very nice payment system visualization. And by swiping from left to right, we see the range of impact we could have if we choose higher donation. It visually encouraged me for donating more. And that's it from today's created project. Guys, check it yourself, it's super fun. But now let's learn some JavaScript with Tomasz in the next section. Stay tuned!
Welcome in the Tips and Tricks blog, the place where I will share some interesting solutions, really nice tips and hot tricks especially for you. Today I would like to show you how to build a beautiful spreadsheet without putting a lot of effort. And to achieve that, I'm going to use the RevoGrid library, which I have mentioned in the news section. I have already imported the JavaScript library into the project. So the stuff I need to do is to define the HTML element, or to use the HTML element in the app, which is the RevoGrid web component. This element requires me to define the maximum height of the whole grid. And let's define the height and put it 300 pixels in there. Great. So what I would like to do is to create a really simple grid with the sorting and filtering mechanism. So the basic thing is that we need to query the grid component from the DOM HTML straight into our JavaScript. And that's because there is a need to define the two properties, at least two properties for grid to make it work. The first one is the columns. And the second one, this is the source, which means this is our data, our rows. Okay, so let's create the configuration for our grid at first. Each of the objects in the columns array will represent the single column. In the header, we want to see the ID field, and it will be referring to the ID field in our data object. The second column will be for the first name, and the third column will be for the last name. As you can see, our component has been re-rendered, and the header has already appeared. The headers, because we can see 3 of them right now. Okay, our headers are actually in here, but we need to define the data. What I would like to do is to use totally random data. So let's say I want to have 100 elements. Let's check the performance. And obviously I want to map such data and return object for each of it. Okay, this should be spread it in here. We have the field that is name ID, first name, last name. Okay, this can be index, first name. Well, I would like to use something random, so let's think about how we can randomly generate the string. Do you have any ideas? If you have some, please put it in the comment. I will do something like that. So I know I need some random string, so let's get the random number. Let's parse it to the string and take some piece of it. That should help, and put some randoms in our data object. So let's check it out. Cool. Now we have the data grid with 100 rows, and it's really fast. Okay, we have the data grid with the sample data, So let's add the sorting mechanism. How to enable the sorting mechanism? This is pretty simple, and there is one step to be done to achieve that. Let's say we would like to sort the IDs. Okay, so it's a matter of adding a single flag for the particular column to achieve the sorting functionality. And as we can see, it works pretty well and really fast. The next thing I would like to add is the filtering option. If you would like to use the filter mechanism with RevoGrid, you just need to turn it on by defining the filter attribute and setting the true value. Oh, sorry, it's HTML actually. And let's check it out. And voila, we have the filter mechanism. Okay, so not equal, let's say I would like to have all records that contains the D and G JAWS. Cool, it was pretty fast. Okay, and I would like to clear this filter and say that I want to look for ID 43. Nice, it works. As you can see, by just defining the data structure and adding some flags, we have the really nice looking, still raw, but really nice looking data grid with sorting mechanism and filtering mechanism out of the box. We do not have to care about it in terms of implementation from scratch. Okay, so that's the live coding example I would like to share with you. If you are interested in the RevoGrid, please take a look at their documentation, check their repository, and you can play by your own. So the link is in the description, and really thank you for the attention. See you soon.
Okay guys, that's it for today. I hope you enjoy it. So check our Twitter,
Our Instagram,
our YouTube channel,
our Spotify.
our socials. Thank you. See you next week.